Right then, Hollywood loves selling you the story of its golden age. Grand. They want you to remember the masterpieces, the larger-than-life stars, the genius directors who were gods among men. They'll tell you about Citizen Kane, about Casablanca, about the epics that defined a generation, and then there's the 1960s, an absolute shambles. The old studio bosses were running around like headless chickens, terrified of these new long-haired fellas and the films they were making. The whole rotten empire was coming crashing down. But the old guard, they wouldn't go quiet. Oh no, they had to make one last, magnificent hames of it all. Come here to me, and I'll tell you about the film that didn't just bury the golden age, it spat on the grave, danced a jig, and then set itself on fire. I'm talking about Otto Preminger's 1968 disaster Skidoo. Now, on paper, well, even on paper, this yoke was a dog's dinner, but you have to understand the mind of the man behind it. Otto Preminger, a man who once made films that mattered. Laura, Anatomy of a Murder, The Man with the Golden Arm. He was a giant, a genuine auteur, and an absolute tyrant, a legendary head, the ball. This is a fella who, on the set of St. Joan, decided the only way to get a real performance out of Gene Seberg for the burning at the stake scene was to, actually set her on fire. He did. She was burned. The crew was horrified. Otto got his shot. This is the man who psychologically tormented his actors, who would scream and bully and throw his weight around until he got exactly what he wanted, whether it was good or not.
Historically not good.
He was the old world dictator, the last of the Hollywood emperors. And by 1967, this was the man who had notions. The world was changing. You had Bonnie and Clyde breaking all the rules, you had the graduate laughing at the establishment, the kids were taking over, the old studios were bleeding money, Fox was on the verge of bankruptcy after the absolute carry-on of Cleopatra. The old model was broken, and Otto, in his infinite turtleneck-wearing wisdom, decided he would make a film for the kids. He, Otto Preminger, the man who set actresses on fire, would make a hippie comedy. I will, yeah. Now, a smart man would maybe, talk to a hippie, or read a book, or maybe just go to a concert and listen. But Otto wasn't a smart man, he was an arrogant man. He figured he was the counterculture, or at least he could buy it. He got a script by a young fella named Doran William Cannon, and this is where the first bit of Egyptry comes in. The script, which was originally called The Universal Charge, was a hot property. It was meant to be a satire, a sharp, cynical, new wave style send-up of both the mob and the hippies. It was meant to be absurdist, in the know. But Otto thought it was a literal comedy. He thought it was a laugh riot, a grand romp. The first mistake? You don't give a sledgehammer to a fella and ask him to perform brain surgery. He bought this script, stripped it of any wit it might have had, and decided he would direct it, and it would be hilarious. He figured he'd make millions. The plan was simple: take this now nonsensical script about mobsters and hippies, a plot so thin you could read the newspaper through it, and then throw a budget big enough to choke a donkey at it. Paramount Pictures, God help them, gave him $6 million. $6 million in 1967, enough money to buy a small country. But the real genius, the real old guard arrogance, was the cast. This was meant to be his big comeback, his proof that he got the new generation. So who did he hire to appeal to the kids? Who were the faces of the revolution? Get a load of this: Jackie Gleason, Carol Channing, Frankie Avalon, Mickey Rooney, George Raft, Cesar Romero, Peter Lawford. It was a list of performers so old, their agents had to use a Ouija board to contact them. It was a who's who of a cocktail party from 1952. These weren't stars, they were relics. Gleason was a TV man, The Honeymooners was ancient history, he was a variety host, Carol Channing was a Broadway foghorn, known for one role, Frankie Avalon was a beach blanket joke. George Raft hadn't been relevant since before the war. These were the very people the hippies were protesting against. It was like trying to start a forest fire with a bucket of water. They weren't just old, they were from a different planet. And the crowning jewel? the big boss, the mobster known only as God? Groucho Marx. Groucho Marx. His first film in over a decade. You Bet Your Life was long gone. The man was a ghost, a legend from a forgotten time, and Otto Preminger dragged him out of retirement to play a mob boss named God who takes LSD. What could possibly go wrong? You couldn't fault the ambition if the ambition was to create the most expensive, out of touch, bewildering train wreck in cinematic history. A surefire hit, so they said, and I'm the Pope. A grand start. From day one, this thing was an absolute circus. Preminger, the old school tyrant, was now in charge of a film set populated by two groups of people who couldn't stand each other. His old world, professional, alcoholic movie stars, and a few hundred actual hippies hired as extras. And I mean, actual hippies. They hired a commune. The hippies were, well, hippies. They were smoking God knows what in the corners, playing music, and generally not giving a damn about Otto's schedule. They were protesting the craft services. They demanded organic food, which in 1967 was like asking for food from the moon. And the old stars, the Gleasons and the Rooneys, were looking at them like they'd just landed from Mars. Gleason, a man who famously liked his steak and his whiskey, had to share a set with fellas eating raw carrots and talking about auras. It was a culture clash so violent, it's a miracle the film got made at all. Preminger, the famous control freak, had no control whatsoever. He'd scream at Jackie Gleason, and Gleason, who was no shrinking violet, would just look at him. He'd yell at the hippies and they'd probably just offer him a flower or something. The man was unraveling. His old tricks didn't work. He couldn't bully people who didn't care about him, his film, or his stupid Hollywood rules. They were away wit de fairies, and it drove Preminger mad. He couldn't control them. He wanted authentic hippies, but he didn't want authentic hippie behavior. He was a man who wanted to paint a rainbow, but only using shades of grey. The man was a gombeen, a fool.
Don't be a fool!
So the story, and I use that term loosely, kicks off. Jackie Gleason is Tough Tony Banks, a retired mobster, and who's his wife? Carol Channing. Stop the lights. The two of them have all the chemistry of a wet match and a block of concrete. She swans around in outfits that cost more than a small car, sinning about how she loves her Tough Tony. It's painful. It's just painful. Preminger hated her. He was famously brutal to her on set. He'd make her sing her big number, the title song Skidoo, over and over and over again, dozens of takes, just to torment her. He'd tell her flat out, "You are awful. You do not know how to be in a movie." This, from the man directing this absolute hames. The nerve of it. Their daughter Darlene has, you guessed it, run off with the hippies. She's in love with a long-haired fella named Stash, played by John Philip Law, who looks genuinely bewildered to be there. Already, the plot is a mess. But then, the phone rings. It's God. And God wants Tony to do one last job, and we meet him, Groucho Marx, as God. He's not in heaven, he's not on a cloud. He's on a yacht, surrounded by women in bikinis. And get this, the yacht. It was Otto Preminger's own yacht, the Ondine, the ego of it all. He's literally directing the film from his own floating palace, making Groucho Marx play God on it. You couldn't make it up. Groucho looks confused. He looks tired. He looks like he's wondering where the script for Duck Soup went. He delivers his lines like he's reading them off a cue card held by a man who's actively on fire. He's got his grease paint moustache, but the spark is long gone. He tells Tony in that flat, bored voice to go to prison. Why? To kill another mobster, Blue Chips Packard, played by Mickey Rooney. Because when you think hippie counterculture, you think Mickey Rooney. Pure devilment. Rooney is in prison, and he's a stool pigeon, so he has to go. So Tony, bless his cotton socks, agrees. He wants to protect his daughter from the hippies, so he agrees to a mob hit? The logic is, it's not there.
Okay.
He gets himself arrested, I think for tax evasion, and sent to Alcatraz. Or a film studio's idea of Alcatraz, which looks more like a holiday camp painted grey. And who's there? Mickey Rooney. Acting de maggot, wearing a beanie hat and just being Mickey Rooney. And a young fella, an actual good actor named Austin Pendleton, who plays a hippie inmate who's trying to dose the prison with LSD. Because of course he is. His name is Fred. He's a pacifist. He wants to turn the prison into a place of love by drugging everyone. This is where the film goes from being a bad comedy to a full-on psychotic breakdown. All this time, Preminger is stomping around the set like a demented goose, but the real story, the legend, is Groucho. Groucho, by all accounts, was not having a good time. He was old, he was frail, and then the story goes that to prepare for his big LSD trip scene, he was actually given LSD. Now, who gave it to him? That's the stuff of myth. Some say it was Paul Krasner, the editor of The Realist. Some say it was one of the hippie extras. Some say it was Preminger's own son, Eric, trying to help his dad get an authentic performance. The truth is, it doesn't matter who lit the fuse. Otto was the Egypt who built the bomb. The stories are legendary. Groucho supposedly looked in the mirror and said, "I've been a funny man for 30 years, but this is the real me." Whether that's true or just all guff, who knows? What is on film? What is on film is Otto Preminger's idea of an LSD trip, and it is a dog's dinner. Let's go back to the plot. Tony Banks Gleason is in prison. He's supposed to kill Blue Chips, Rooney, but he accidentally drinks the LSD water that Fred Pendleton meant for Blue Chips, and he trips. And what does a trip look like in Otto Preminger's head? It's just flashing lights and dancing. Jackie Gleason, a man built like a fridge, a man who moved with the grace of a falling cabinet, starts grooving. He sees colors. He feels things. It's one of the most horrifying, uncomfortable, and deeply embarrassing things ever put to celluloid. He has a revelation. He realizes love is the answer. A grand, profound message delivered by a man who looks like he's just swallowed a wasp. But that's not even the main event. Back on the yacht, God, Groucho, gets his own dose. How? Stop the lights. A little hippie fella, a turned mobster, sends him a message on a model boat, and the sail is laced with acid. I can't. I can't. Groucho licks the sail to read the secret message, "You see," and he begins his trip, and it's Groucho, and a superimposed image of a skeleton, and then a garbage can. A floating garbage can with a head in it. And then a disembodied head of, I think it's Cesar Romero, and then Sinbad the Sailor. No, I'm not joking. And then he sees a green face. I don't know. It's a 5-minute sequence of an 80-year-old comedy legend gurning at the camera while images that look like they were cut out of a child's scrapbook float by. It is an absolute hames. It's not psychedelic, it's not funny, it's just sad. You can see the ghost of comedy past screaming to be let out. Groucho later said, "My trip on Skidoo was one of my first. I'm glad I learned the truth about LSD. What truth he learned from a floating garbage can, I have no idea. And the B-plot, I nearly forgot. Carol Channing and Frankie Avalon as a hip mobster are looking for Tony. They end up on a bus with all the hippies, and Carol Channing sings. She sings that song Skidoo in a glittering silver jumpsuit. I think she's there, belting it out like she's on Broadway, surrounded by these patchouli stinking kids, all of them looking at her like she's their mad aunt who's escaped from the home. It's a fever dream. So, Tony has his revelation. He needs to escape. He needs to get to God's yacht and do something. It's not clear. He decides he's not gonna kill Blue Chips. Instead, he tells all the other inmates, all these old school mobsters, played by fellas like George Raft, about love. And what's the plan? They spike the prison stew with more acid. So now the entire prison, guards and all, is tripping. And the inmates. I need you to brace yourself. They don't just decide to leave. No, that would be too sane. First, they all paint their faces green. Green. and put flowers in their hair. All these old-timey character actors looking like a Street Paddy's Day parade gone wrong. Then they build a hot air balloon. Out of what, you ask? Prison blankets, plastic wrap, some rope, and love? I don't know. It's an arts and crafts project from hell, and this balloon, this yoke, it works.
How could you be so sure?
They all pile in. Gleason, Mickey Rooney, all the other old cons, and they float away. They just float away over the wall. The guards are too busy watching the paint melt to stop them. Meanwhile, Carol Channing and the hippies who have been driving around in a psychedelic bus see them, and they cheer. I think it's unclear. They all sail off to God's yacht, and what happens when they get there? Groucho, still high as a kite, sees them coming, and he just gives up. He gives Tony's daughter to the hippie, he gives Tony his freedom, he just stops. The end. That's it. That's the film. But the final insult, the final act of pure devilment, is the credits. Otto Preminger, the head, the ball, couldn't just have normal credits. Oh no. He hired the musician Harry Nilsson, a genuine talent, a man who wrote Without You and Everybody's Talking, a fella who was, at that moment, the coolest songwriter in town, and Otto traps him. It's like finding a diamond in a septic tank. He made him sing the credits, not sing a song over the credits, sing the actual credits, starring Jackie Gleason, and Carol Channing, and Mickey Rooney. He sings the whole list. The gaffer, the best boy, the caterer. He sings, written by Doran William Cannon. He sings, directed by Otto Preminger. It goes on for 7 minutes. It's a hostage situation, set to a calypso beat. It's the film's final act of aggression against the audience, an absolute circus. So, the film comes out, Christmas 1968. A lovely present for the whole family. If your family is the Manson family. And the critics. The critics didn't just pan it, they tried to have it arrested. They called it a prolonged, joyless, tasteless, and pointless joke. One fella said it was monumentally awful. Another just said, it's a movie that should not have been made. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, the arrogance of it, the waste of it, and the box office, get a way out of that. It made nothing.
Come on. I knew it the whole time.
It evaporated. $6 million. Gone. It was one of the biggest bombs of the decade. Nobody went to see it. The kids he was trying to appeal to, they were watching 2001, A Space Odyssey. They were getting ready for Easy Rider. They weren't watching Jackie Gleason pretend to be high. And the old folks, they were just confused by the whole mess. It was a film for nobody. So what happened? What was this? A misunderstood masterpiece? A satirical genius? Was it just bad luck? A few bad choices? Not a bit of it. Skidoo wasn't a film. It was a cry for help. It was a funeral. It was the moment the old studio system, the old guard of Hollywood, proved to the entire world that they hadn't just lost the plot, they'd never even read the cover. Preminger thought he could buy the counterculture. He thought he could hire a few long-haired lads, throw his old pickled mates in front of a camera, add some flashing lights, and the kids would call him a genius. He was a man with a megaphone screaming, "Hello, fellow kids," into a hurricane. The film isn't a comedy, it's a documentary of one man's arrogance. It's a multi-million-dollar monument to pure Egyptry. So what killed the film? The star's ego? The terrible script? The acid? Get away out of dat? The studio was a rotten ship, and this film was the iceberg. They were so desperate to stay relevant, so terrified of the change that was coming, that they made this, a war against common sense. It's the most expensive, most star-studded home movie ever made by a man who's clearly lost his mind. It killed what was left of Preminger's reputation. It's the last, sad, confused whimper of Groucho Marx's legendary career. As me old fella used to say, you can't make a racehorse out of a donkey. And Otto Preminger, God love him, didn't just try to get that donkey to the starting line. He painted it with psychedelic colours, glued a flower behind its ear, and tried to tell the world it was the next big thing. Me granny had a word for it. All sizzle and no steak. And that's the dirt from the cutting room floor. The story of Skidoo. A mess from start to finish. Right, I'm off. Go on now.